It's time for another WrestlePlanet news update, as we have more on Braun Strowman's talks with Impact Wrestling, we have details on Bryan Danielson's AEW contract, and has Bray Wyatt's AEW debut date been revealed? All that and more coming up in today's video, but first... AEW have officially announced the company's debut at Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, where they will tape episodes of Dark on Saturday, September 11th. Tickets are free but can be reserved online, with 4 tickets allowed per person. The tapings will be held in Soundstage 19, 2 doors down from Soundstage 21. Soundstage 21 was where the TNA Impact Zone was from 2004 till 2013, and was also the home of WCW Worldwide and WCW Pro. AEW's soundstage is smaller, although it was the home of the Impact Zone when Impact returned from touring in 2013, and they also used it in 2017 and 18. Only AEW Dark is currently expected to be taped in the studios, and it will be used as a developmental brand of the company, with younger talent being mixed in with some of the company's bigger stars. AEW Dark Elevation will remain on the road and be taped before or after episodes of Dynamite and Rampage, and no matches have currently been announced for Dark, although the graphic features Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston, Thunder Rosa, FTW champion Ricky Starks, Wardlow, and Powerhouse Hobbs. Next up, we have some wrestling game news, as according to Sports Gamer Online, the upcoming WWE 2K22 will see the return of a popular game mode. The game, which is scheduled for release in March next year, is said to be seeing the return of General Manager mode, which was last seen in the series 13 years ago in WWE's SmackDown vs. Raw 2008. Sources have told the site that the return of GM mode was a top priority, and this follows demands to see its return for literally over a decade. I have many memories of playing GM mode, and hopefully it's just as fun as the older versions, if not better. Whilst this hasn't been confirmed, I'd like to think that the mode will allow for online games, which seems very likely given how the industry has changed since 2007. The return of GM mode and the upcoming AEW console game means we could be in for some exciting times for wrestling game fans. ECW legend Bully Ray appeared on the Pro Wrestling for Life podcast hosted by X-Pac and discussed the recent AEW All Out pay-per-view. Bully was asked if he thinks the show was as big as a game changer as many fans have made it out to be. The show saw the AEW debut of Adam Cole, Ruby Soho, Bryan Danielson, and of course Minoru Suzuki, as well as the in-ring return of CM Punk after a 7-year hiatus. Bully noted that WWE haven't seen this level of competition for a long time, and he said, "I think these companies are going in 2 completely different directions. One company is traditionally a pro wrestling company. The other one is very much week by week becoming more and more sports entertainment. AEW is as close to competition as WWE has had in forever. We've already seen a little skirmish and how it ended up. AEW has the energy and the enthusiasm of the pro wrestling fan base, because they are giving fans everything that these fans feel that they are not getting from the WWE." He'd go on to compare AEW to both WCW and ECW, as well as Attitude Era WWF, and added, "What I'm seeing is Tony Khan and AEW have looked back and said, okay, this worked at ECW, this worked in the Attitude Era, this worked in WCW. I'm going to put it all together in a big bowl, call it AEW, and I'm going to pour it out there for the wrestling fans to enjoy." AEW president Tony Khan is a known long-time wrestling fan and was a kid during the days of the WWF Attitude Era, WCW and ECW in the 90s, and would often even be in attendance at the ECW arena. It seems that word is beginning to spread that AEW are indeed becoming competition for WWE, and it may be time for them to continue to step up their game. And I haven't watched it yet, but by all accounts last night's episode of SmackDown from Madison Square Garden was solid, so let's hope that continues going forward. Next up, we have a report regarding the proposed plans for Adam Cole were he to stay with WWE, and let's just say that there's no wonder he decided to move on. According to Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer, the plan was to have Keith Lee turn heel and have Adam Cole as his manager, similar to the Lio Rush-Bobby Lashley dynamic from a couple of years ago. Essentially, Cole would have been a loudmouth talker who would hide behind the much bigger Lee. It was also noted that Cole would have likely been given a different last name due to a potential clash match with Michael Cole. Cole's WWE contract expired last month, and despite this offer to become a main roster manager, he instead decided to join AEW, where he has been shot straight into the main event scene as a member of the Elite. And I bet that was a tough decision. Finn Balor recently appeared on the Cultaholic YouTube channel for an interview with Tom Campbell ahead of WWE's upcoming UK tour. The former WWE Universal Champion, who originally made a name for himself on the UK scene and in New Japan Pro Wrestling, discussed the idea of the Forbidden Door, which has seen promotions such as New Japan, AEW and Impact working together and sharing talent. When asked his thoughts on companies working together, Finn said that he loves the idea, and he said, "I feel if I have the opportunity to wrestle in Japan or Mexico or Europe, whatever promotion, I'd love the opportunity to be able to do it. Obviously, contractually with WWE, they take care of all my dates and bookings and travel and organize everything. If somehow we could set up a relationship with WWE and these other brands touring around the world, I would love to challenge myself from different performers from different regions." As shown by his recent time in WWE, Finn is willing to work for different brands, having recently had a successful run back in NXT, and he was also set for an NXT UK program with Walter before the pandemic hit. Whilst this is still under the WWE banner, it shows his desire to test himself against new opponents across the globe. Perhaps one day we may see Prince Devitt step through the real Forbidden Door, but for now he'll remain at the top of the SmackDown brand. And quickly, just before we continue, make sure you drop a like on the video as it helps me out a lot, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any upcoming wrestling content as we head, hopefully, towards 100,000 subscribers. But now, let's press play on the video. Next up, we have an update regarding the future of Braun Strowman, who was released from WWE on June 2nd, with his non-compete clause expiring on August 31st. According to Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Braun could be set to sign for Impact Wrestling, with him potentially making his debut at Bound for Glory on October 23rd. This is of course regarded as Impact's biggest pay-per-view of the year, and star power-wise, it could see Impact making their biggest signing in quite some time. This report follows a recent live stream involving Impact EVP Scott D'Amore, who hinted that both Buddy Murphy, now known as Buddy Matthews, as well as Braun Strowman, now going by his real name of Adam Scherr, will both be debuting in Impact soon. In regards to Strowman, he used the phrase Braun for Glory before calling it an Easter egg. According to The Observer, talks are still ongoing and no deal has been signed as of this writing, but we'll keep you updated should any more news break. Next up, we have some details on the AEW contract of Bryan Danielson, who has reportedly signed a multi-year deal with the promotion. According to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, Bryan will be with the company for the next 3 years, which means his deal will expire in the summer of 2024. This when the American Dragon is 43 years old. Both WWE and AEW are said to have made similar offers financially, and according to the Observer newsletter, WWE were willing to allow him to work matches in New Japan Pro Wrestling and was given permission to work the G1 Climax tournament by Vince McMahon. Had he agreed to stay with WWE and then AEW cemented their relationship with New Japan, it means the Japanese promotion would have likely been unwilling to book WWE talent, which ultimately aided Bryan's decision to sign with AEW instead. Essentially, a relationship with WWE and New Japan would have been more fragile. The ability to work in Japan was a big part of his decision, and it seems he felt like signing with AEW would lead to a better chance of this happening. And finally, we have the potential date of Bray Wyatt's All Elite Wrestling debut, according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, and we've got a lot of news from him today. In the latest edition of the Observer newsletter, Wyatt, real name Wyndham Rotunda, is likely to sign for Impact Wrestling or AEW. If he chooses Impact, he says that his debut will likely happen at Bound for Glory, but it is worth noting that this event will be held on October 23rd, but Wyndham's non-compete clause won't be over until 6 days later. Unless Wyatt can somehow get some time trimmed off his non-compete, an appearance at Bound for Glory won't be happening, despite this report. In the same paragraph, it was noted that if Wyatt decides to become All Elite instead, his debut will likely occur on the September 29th edition of Dynamite, which again strangely occurs before the expected expiration date of his non-compete. According to my maths, Wyndham will become a free agent on October 29th, which is 90 days after he was released, which makes me slightly confused by this report. As mentioned before, there's a chance that Wyatt has managed to get his non-compete clause shortened, however this wasn't specified in the Observer. If this September date is to be believed, this would be a fitting place for Wyatt to debut, as the show is being held from Rochester, New York, the hometown of the late Brodie Lee. Brodie was of course a member of the Wyatt family in WWE led by Wyndham, and the two were very close friends up until his death in December. Brodie's AEW debut as the Exalted One was planned to happen in the same building, the Blue Cross Arena, but that episode of Dynamite was moved to Daly's place due to the pandemic hitting that week. And before you go, make sure you check out my updated list where I discuss the top 10 AEW debuts of all time.